think I'm entitled?
You want answers!
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
I woke up this morning, got myself a gun. Mama always said I'd be the chosen one.
What is the purpose of the United Nations? The UN has such tremendous potential. I've always said it. It has such tremendous, tremendous potential. But it's not even coming close to living up to that potential. For the most part, at least for now, all they seem to do is write a really strongly worded letter and then never follow that letter up. It's empty words, and empty words don't solve war. The only thing that solves war and wars is action.
President Trump today at the 80th General Assembly of the United Nations. And he basically told the audience, for the most part, your countries are going to hell. And they began to break down where they're failing their own nations, much less the world. And the United Nations, as he said, what is the purpose? We know what the purpose was originally. Originally, it was to bring the world together and resolve conflicts. But they create more conflicts than they resolve. And, of course, one of the big issues right now is moving forward to make Palestine a sovereign state. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is redoubling his efforts to ensure that cannot exist. And we know it can't. So Trump today addressing the 80th General Assembly, pointing out, you've got so many wars going on, and you are supposed to be bringing an end to them, and your countries are going to hell. Welcome to hour number one, Larry Connors USA. We're here every Monday through Friday for you from 6 to 8 p.m. And when we're on the air, we are streaming video, as in right now. You could watch the program. How do you do that? Well, you go to NewsTalkSTL Rumble, Facebook, Twitter, Larry Connors USA Rumble or Facebook. And remember, everything goes up as a podcast, audio and video, when we complete. Either at NewsTalkSTL, LarryConnorsUSA.com, or Larry Connors USA Facebook. And reminding you, with Larry Connors USA, you will get news, analysis, opinion, and education. You're going to leave this hour with more information than you have right now. I promise you. In our next hour, Don Lemon Fruitcake, and I do not reference his gender choices or his lifestyle. I say fruitcake because he is nutty as hell. But his recent remarks about Charlie Kirk are slanderous, and I'm going to call them out. That's coming up in our next hour. Later in this hour, retired Army Colonel Steve Bucci with the Heritage Foundation, dealing with what Trump is telling the UN today, also dealing with Palestine possibly becoming a sovereign state. And don't forget what Russia has been doing with drones over Poland, another crisis point. But back to Donald Trump today addressing the United Nations, saying, you have created an issue that continues to escalate, and you have been funding illegal activity that is destroying our country and other nations.
Not only is the UN not solving the problems it should, too often, it's actually creating new problems for us to solve. The best example is the number one political issue of our time, the crisis of uncontrolled migration. It's uncontrolled. Your countries are being ruined. The United Nations is funding an assault on Western countries and their borders. In 2024, the UN budgeted $372 million in cash assistance to support an estimated 624,000 migrants journeying into the United States. Think of that. The UN is supporting people that are illegally coming into the United States, and then we have to get them out. The UN also provided food, shelter, transportation, and debit cards to illegal aliens. Can you believe that? On the way to infiltrate our southern border.
And I would add, thank you, Joe Biden, because he contributed by putting our nation in the crosshairs and joining this mass migration project. It is changing the face of Europe. I've told you for years now, watch what is happening in Europe. And they're beginning to realize exactly what they're dealing with. They've already seen much of France, England, Germany become more radical Muslim. I'm not just talking about bringing the Muslim religion into these nations, but they're coming in to not assimilate, but to control, to take charge, to make the people subject to Sharia law if necessary. And they continue to just basically give them a free pass. Come on in. The other issue that is facing us right now is that in addition to the Ukraine war, Russia has been using that as an excuse to overfly NATO countries with drones, violating their airspace, Poland being one example. Retired General Jack King says this is a direct provocation.
They flew several hours, 19 drones into Polish airspace. That is an act of war in itself. And they're testing Poland's response to that. And number two, they're testing their will. And that's what's happened also in Estonia. What do I mean by that? Well, they want Poland to conclude that what they need to do is shore up their defenses better and reduce the resources and support for Ukraine because they're threatening them. Oh. And it's not a hybrid war. These are conventional tactics being used. Russia has the capability to deliver 1,000 drones flying into Ukrainian airspace and into Polish airspace. And it's a fact that Poland would not be able to stop all those drones based on the interceptors that they have and the $1 million interceptors that they are to shoot down a $10,000 drone that has the capability of killing people. Wake up. This is not a hybrid war. This is Russia testing you, and the next step could be quite something significant. And NATO has got to come together and not talk about Article 4, talk about Article 5. And the next step is to shoot them down.
So are you saying
that's where we should be? Wake up, NATO.
Wake up, NATO. Wake up, UN. You're certainly aware of this as well. You should also be dealing with this. You're a governing body, supposedly, to bring all the nations together to promote peace. You're far from it. And to boil down what General Jack King stated, Russia is testing Poland and also pulling away whatever support they might be trying to give Ukraine. They know how to play the game. And then don't forget those who are pushing, let's make Palestine a sovereign state. Carolyn Levitt from the White House.
All of these Western nations that are recognizing a Palestinian state, the president has been very clear. He disagrees with this decision. He spoke about that in the UK, standing right next to his friend, Prime Minister Starmer. And he feels this does not do anything to release the hostages, which is the primary goal right now in Gaza, does nothing to end this conflict and bring this war to a close. And frankly, he believes it's a reward to Hamas. So he believes these decisions are just more talk and not enough action from some of our friends and allies.
That's White House Press Secretary Carolyn Levitt on the dozens of countries who are now recognizing Palestinian statehood or want to do so. France yesterday becoming the latest U.S. ally to do so during the 80th annual UN General Assembly. Belgium, Monaco, Luxembourg, and Malta joined the U.K., Canada, and Australia in making similar declarations. The White House says the recognition of a Palestinian state makes it harder to end the war in Gaza.
It does. And when Carolyn Levitt says President Trump standing beside our ally, President Starmer, I'm not so sure they're our allies anymore. I will share this with you. This is interesting from a ranking member of the Democrat Party in the House. Congressman Gregory Meeks, Democrat, New York, said, I do support a two-state solution with a Palestinian state. You can't just declare it because that doesn't make it be. Said saying it should exist, that's the easy part. The hard part is negotiations. Who's going to negotiate it? And so for me, in my viewpoint, we also need to have a Palestinian voice. That cannot be Hamas. Well, there is another rub. How are you going to separate Hamas from the Palestinians? If you were expecting, after the assassination of Charlie Kirk and the memorial over the weekend, that perhaps the hard left would continue to push aside hate rhetoric, I give you example, former Vice President Harris.
And right now we are dealing with, as I called him at my speech on the ellipse, a tyrant. We used to compare the strength of our democracy to communist dictators. That's what we're dealing with right now in Donald Trump. And these titans of industry are not speaking up. And perhaps it is because his threats and the way he has used the weight of the federal government to take out vengeance on his critics is something that they fear, and I get that. I understand why they do. We've seen the demonstration of it.
It's the same old story. Wash, rinse, recycle. And that's what they're doing. She has not backed off anything. She wants to continue to push that storyline. I guess she thinks it will give her a greater standing as a candidate for president. There will be those that would certainly accept her. Obviously, I'm not one. And I want to share with you something that was brought to the attention for its publication, the Daily Signal. Tyler O'Neill.
Imagine that an organization that brands conservatives and Christians haters and puts them on a map with chapters of the Ku Klux Klan works with the federal government, advising the administration on its domestic terror strategy. This Orwellian nightmare isn't a hypothetical. It actually happened under the Biden administration.
And I can tell you that we've had many agencies in the new Biden administration reaching out to solicit our expertise and our knowledge and information to help shape the policies that the new administration is adopting to counter the domestic terrorism threat.
That's Margaret Huang, president of the Southern Poverty Law Center, an organization that has long been notorious for exaggerating hate to raise money and for branding its ideological opponents, hate groups, on par with the Klan.
And again, you compare Trump to Hitler, to Nazis, to the Klan, to dictators. I remind you, and you have it fresh in your mind, what happened to you and your friends and your colleagues if you spoke out contrary to what you were being shoved with during the COVID crisis? If you dared say, is there something else I can do? Do I need the jab? Can I use another drug? How dare you suggest that? You cannot even relate on your social media. I had an aunt who did this and it worked for her. You could not do that. They were who was doing the banning? That was under the Biden administration. The same one that the Southern Poverty Law Center said was standing for freedom. And Kamala Harris saying, we represent freedom. They were silencing speech left and right if it did not conform to their guidelines. Well, now I'm looking at a piece where Google is admitting directly, what we've always known anyway, but they are admitting we had political censorship, no kidding, on YouTube. Now we promise to embrace free speech. This is in a letter to House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan. admitting that the Biden administration pressured it to censor Americans that did not follow what they wanted. And we remember those meetings, and we remember being told. We had meetings with the White House, and they said we met with them almost daily, and they declared what we should or should not allow to be spread across social media platforms. That is censorship. I don't care how you spell it, how you look at it. That is clear censorship. And, of course, across our nation right now, we continue to have assault upon law and order, in particular against ICE agents. Homeland Security Secretary Noem.
This was just something they could use to posture and attack our ICE law enforcement officers over again. And that's what's so irresponsible about it. Governor Newsom waited many, many days to even sign this into law, and like you said, wouldn't even be enforced until January, which means that it's pointless. It's just something that they want to talk about. I was a governor when I had a bill and a policy that I thought was very important for my people in the state of South Dakota. We put an emergency clause on it. We signed it into law as soon as possible. That means that Governor Newsom doesn't think this is important. He just wants to use this to raise money. He wants to use it to go out and try to make himself feel like a big deal, and he's doing it by attacking our law enforcement officers and making their lives more dangerous. And every time I'm in a room with our law enforcement officers, I'm talking to them before they go out on our streets, I'm just overwhelmed by the fact that all of these young men and women have families, that they all want to go home to their families at night too, and that people like Gavin Newsom are making it much more dangerous for them just to go do their jobs.
And for anyone in law enforcement, who wants to put on a badge nowadays? You put a target upon your chest and upon your family, because there are those out there that believe you're the Gestapo. And yet the thugs have free reign in every neighborhood where they choose. When we look over our nation right now, we have so many opportunities to try to restore it, but we're letting it slip away. And, of course, sometimes you're going to have to use force to get things back in order, and you know what's going to happen then. Later in this hour, a prophetic warning from Charlie Kirk made earlier this year before he was assassinated. Coming up next, retired Colonel Steve Bucci. Lock and load, ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
In all of these years that Wellington Environmental has been my sponsor, I've never mentioned their duct cleaning services. Allergy season is here, and Wellington crews clean air ducts daily in homes and commercial buildings, also cleaning air handling units and diffusers in commercial facilities. Why? Well, because people will see black dirt and mold on the vents, or they are actually suffering from allergies. Don't be fooled by low-cost duct cleaning providers saying they charge only per vent, because once they get on site, the price will skyrocket. Wellington does not do this, never has. Wellington will give you an estimate, and you say Larry Connors, and immediately you get a 20% discount. Call Cindy, 314-644-4930, 314-644-4930. Make your home and business better, safer with Wellington. Be well with Wellington. Back pain? Follow me to Esquire Sports Medicine, where they've got your back. Esquire is the oldest sports medicine clinic in St. Louis. Dr. Draghi and his team of chiropractors can get you back to work, back to life without the pain. New patients usually scheduled within 24 hours. 314-644-0885. 644-0885. EsquireSportsMedicine.com. Another day must be another roofer in town. And John Beal and I were talking. He said, every time you turn around, there's a new roofing company. Many of them have no idea what they're doing, and the statistics show that many will be out of business within 2 to 5 years. Who are you going to call to help you then? you need to remember only one name, John Beal. John Beal Roofing. You have a problem, he can take care of it. And we'll be here for you. John Beal Roofing. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. The Oak Street Inn and Lounge has some great news. The Speakeasy will now be open on Sundays, starting at 2. Open to the public. Great for those in the industry who want to enjoy a Sunday fun day. Plus, enjoy sushi and cocktails. What more could you want? You want to make sure you get the code. And how do you get the code to the Speakeasy? You go to the Facebook, Oak Street Inn and Lounge Facebook. I'll see you at Oak Street Inn and Lounge in Cottleville.
This is News Talk STL.
Oh, smokestack lightning, shining just like gold. Oh, don't you hear me cry? Woo, woo.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Welcome back. My guest we've had on before, and always glad to welcome him back, retired Army Colonel Steve Bucci, 30 years with the Green Beret, now with the Heritage Foundation. Glad to have you with us, Colonel. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me back again.
Well, I wanted to get into several topics with you. Let's begin with the issue of the allies of ours, UK, France, deciding they want to push for a sovereign state for Palestine. Your reaction?
Yeah, well, it's a terrible idea. It really accomplishes nothing except rewarding Hamas for their terrorist activities.
And I think that's a big key. I mean, that's the way they're going to look at it. They're going to say, see, we ended up winning.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're going to say, and that's what they believe. And, trying to get the last hostages back, all this is going to do is make that more difficult.
Israel's doubling down on the settlements and calling, and some are saying that, maybe we should annex part of the West Bank and make part of it happen. Netanyahu is doubling down on his efforts to ensure a Palestinian state never exists. But I'm looking at the so-called allies of ours, Britain, France, Canada, Australia, all joining to say, let's recognize Palestinian statehood.
Well, what's really ridiculous is the fact that the Palestinians have always been the ones that have said no to this idea of a two-state solution. They don't want a two-state solution. They want Israel eliminated. So, this may make President Macron and Stammer and these other guys all feel good, but it accomplishes absolutely nothing other than to give aid and comfort to Hamas.
And I would think they would know that. So why were they making a decision on behalf of a Palestinian sovereign state?
It's solely because they are playing to the domestic Islamist constituency in each of their countries.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted to throw them a bone, and hopefully they won't protest and burn down their cities. But all they're accomplishing is rewarding Hamas, as we've already talked about.
Your point echoes what President Trump was saying earlier today at the UN. He said one of the big issues that we as a body of the UN should be facing, and that's this mass migration that you folks have allowed and encouraged. And, of course, Joe Biden did his role for our nation to be involved with it. But he's pointing out how mass migration is destroying Europe.
Yeah, it clearly is. Nobody really believes that these migrants, legal or illegal, in those particular countries, are adding anything of a positive nature. They're not assimilating. They want to turn their new countries into what their old countries were, because this is an effort to colonize the Western world.
I'm glad you used that word, because that's exactly what's in my mind.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Now, Trump also today talked about all these globalist institutions decaying the world order. And he's talking about holding a multilateral meeting, or he's planning with Qatar and Saudi Arabia, which reminds me, I have not had a chance to visit with you and get your take on the fact that Israel went after Hamas in Qatar, into a sovereign state, not Palestine, and not directly going after just Hamas territory, but inside Qatar to take out some of their targets for Hamas and Iranian leadership. I haven't heard your thoughts on that.
Well, remember, Israel has already gone into Iran, Yemen, Syria, Lebanon. They have told these people that they are not going to ignore them just because they're in another country. So, I mean, I feel badly that the Qataris are upset about this, but maybe they shouldn't harbor the leaders of a terrorist group.
Amen. Amen. So the other thing we have going on is, and General Jack King was referring to it earlier on our program, these drones that are violating airspace of Poland, Estonia, and others. And he says they're really testing. The Russians are testing to see how the response is, and pulling resources that might be going to Ukraine to fight Russia. Your thoughts?
Yeah, look, the Russians are not doing this by accident. The Russians and the Soviets before them have done this, in Alaska, in Europe, in other places where they've tested the United States and NATO. And this is just a continuation of it. Anybody who thinks that Putin is going to be a legitimate negotiating partner is kind of daft. He's a bad guy. And we can't expect him to just back down and act like a normal member of the community of nations.
We have heard Trump say, we're trying to work with him, we're trying to deal with him, but he's also admitted he's misled me, he's let me down, he's not honoring what he said. What's the breaking point?
I can't pick that out, Larry. I wish I knew. But in my opinion, we're way past it. I'm not advocating we go to war with Russia, but we really need to put the hammer down as far as every economic sanction we can put on them, pressure on the countries, some of them that are our allies that are still buying Russian fuel, gas and oil.
India in particular.
It needs to stop.
And India in particular. I'd expect China to deal with them, but we have basically given India an ultimatum saying you're already paying a 45% tariff. We're going to hit you with a 100% penalty tariff if you continue to sell, or rather buy oil from Russia, giving them more money. But I don't see us doing it.
Yeah, we've got to. We're past the point of threatening. We need to execute these things. And then if the countries respond, you can always take it off again. But until that time, we need to make them pay.
If we're going to look for a way out of this, both dealing with Ukraine and Russia and the Palestinian issue, I don't see anything on the horizon that says, here's your answer.
No, it's, you know, you can get into extreme ideas, you know, shooting missiles at Russia or whatever. I don't think that's really in the cards. So it's kind of a waste of time to talk about it. But we have not fully engaged economically and diplomatically in the way that we need to.
What's the next step then? What do we need to do?
We need to engage fully diplomatically and economically. Stop the talk and execute.
I would agree with retired Army Colonel Steve Bucci, and I know many of you would as well. Steve, thank you as always for your time, sir.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on the show.
You bet. I want to share with you before we go to the break, Secret Service is reporting it's dismantling a network of electronic devices located throughout the New York tri-state area, finding 300 servers capable of crippling the New York cell phone system. According to U.S. government senior officials, these are within 35 miles of the current UN General Assembly meeting in New York. The network, with the potential to disable cell phone towers, essentially shut down all cell network in New York City. The purpose? Chaos, and maybe some other act to follow. We have so many in our nation that came in under Joe Biden's watch that were not vetted, and yet we know many of them were terrorists. They did come through. We caught some. We did not obviously catch all of them. So who's behind this? That's still to be decided. But so far, the Secret Service says it's dismantling it and taking care of it. Coming up, autism and what drugs women take when they're pregnant, prescription drugs or non-prescription drugs.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
I can tell you how to get a free quick quiz to see how artificial intelligence can boost your company's potential. You go to priglobal.ai, priglobal.ai. St. Louis Business Magazine listing PRI as one of the leading IT companies, and PRI has its own AI lab to develop what your business needs. priglobal.ai, priglobal.ai. You want the best place to watch baseball or any sport and be able to enjoy premium cigars and whiskeys? Lit Cigar Lounge. Lit has so many events each month. You need to constantly check the Lit Cigar Lounge Facebook. You don't want to miss anything. Plus, you can order food from Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta, delivered within minutes right to your table. By the way, we're in the season for great patio dining. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta has your table waiting. Hey, looking for windows that solve your problems and actually add value to your home? Renewal by Anderson. Anderson products increase your home value by at least 15%. Right now, get $329 off every window, $729 off every patio or entry door, and ask about our zero interest plan for 3 years. Renewal by Anderson, the full-service replacement division of Anderson. That's a name you've trusted for more than 122 years. Renewal by Anderson has FiberX frames, 20% stronger than vinyl, built to last. It's why we have more 5-star reviews than anyone in St. Louis. And only Renewal by Anderson backs it up with the nation's best warranty. Schedule your complimentary consultation, rbastl.com, or call 877-WINDOWS, 877-WINDOWS. Renewal by Anderson, superior products, exceptional service. Hey, if you're 50 or older, you do not want to take any risk with your money. In fact, you want Leslie Consulting. My friend Bob Leslie can show you a gain and retain plan. Means you never lose. Plus, you get up to a 20% bonus on day one. Leslie Consulting, a leader in brokerage and risk management. 314-721-0066. LeslieConsulting.com.
This is News Talk STL.
Well, you can tell by the way I use my walk. I'm a woman's man. No time to talk. Music loud. Women want for being kicked around since I was born. Never tolerate. I don't hate. And you may look the other way, but we can try to understand. The New York Times are big on man. Whether you're a brother away, there ain't nothing staying alive.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
I think what we're doing is we're trying to say we want to take this problem head on. You know, we also released today information about a new label change. We're going to approve a treatment for kids with severe autism that have an antibody or a deficiency of folic acid in the brain. Maybe 20 to 50 or 60% of all the kids with autism have a blocked receptor in their brain that's not allowing their folate, that is their vitamin B9, to get in the brain and for those nerve cells to develop normally. And this medication, leucovorin, bypasses that receptor. And there are incredible stories from doctors of seeing dramatic improvements. So we've got good news and we've got this warning.
That is, of course, Dr. Bakari. He is the FDA commissioner. And they were announcing yesterday, along with Robert Kennedy Jr. and President Trump, we're going to continue to fight autism and find some causes. And we do possibly think it's linked to Tylenol. There are different studies on that, women taking Tylenol while pregnant. But there's also this issue about folate acid. This is a prime thing women are advised to take when they're pregnant for the health of them and their baby. But if it's not getting to the baby because, as you were hearing the doctor say, some kind of blocked receptor, then maybe that leads to autism. Right now, 1 in 36. Are you listening? Are you listening? 1 in 36 children is believed to have some form of autism. I have relatives, and I know of 2 children within that small group of relatives. Diagnoses of autism have skyrocketed in recent years, increasing by 175% between 2011 and 2022. There's a lot of blame as to where you're going to put it. Just one, greater awareness of autism, just quickly identifying it, creating this spectrum and dropping kids into it, improved screening, updated diagnostic criteria. All of those could say there's not really more, it's just we are now recognizing it and labeling it. Where it used to be just kids acting up, ADDD basically, bipolar. It all falls somewhere on that spectrum for some more severe than others. They're now talking about this leucovorin, which might offer some answers for the children with autism and certainly be helpful for their parents. Folate is needed for brain improvement. And as you were hearing the doctor say, there are possibly, with some research, children that had neurodevelopment disorders have a folate deficiency, a shortage of B9 in the brain. This drug, basically a generic drug, President Trump is touting as an amazing drug, could be an answer to autism. It has been prescribed to protect healthy cells from toxic side effects of chemotherapy, to enhance chemotherapy, and to treat cerebral folate deficiency. Will it work for kids if we catch them soon enough and if it's administered properly? One pediatric neurologist researching it as a possible potential autism treatment said, if you're going to the doctor and looking for an autism pill, It does not exist. But leucovorin has helped a lot of children. Pray that they find other ways that it can indeed help other children. Reference drugs in our nation, the cost of them, sources is another issue. Pharmaceutical giant Bristol Myers Squibb announcing its new flagship drug will launch at the same price overseas in the UK as in the US. That is a precedent-breaking move reflecting President Trump's push to demand an end of higher cost for Americans. Why should we pay more for drugs that are available at lower prices in other countries? Bristol Myers saying we agree with the Trump administration. Other countries need to pay their fair share. So we're asking the UK to step up and start recognizing the value and pay their fair share. Trump had announced in May he would sign an executive order on drug pricing to do the right thing. Basically, a most favored nation policy, where we will pay the same price as the nation that pays the lowest price anywhere in the world. That's good news. News out of New York, not so good, depending on your viewpoint. I'll grant you your viewpoint. Mine is, to repeat what I said, not so good. Democrat Socialist New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani is now opening up a commanding 20-point lead over Andrew Cuomo, who's running as an independent. That means he has 45% support. This is according to a Suffolk University City poll of New Yorkers. Cuomo, who resigned as governor in 2021, has 25% support. Curtis Sliwa, the Republican nominee, 9%, and the incumbent mayor Eric Adams is below him at 8%. So once again, it appears more and more likely New York City is going to go socialist. What else could you do to destroy the Big Apple? That's it. Turn it over to Mamdani and government-run grocery stores and housing complexes and communes, and pretty soon you have exactly what he wants, a Marxist city. Well, by the way, here's one of these stories that you might not have followed so closely. The French President Macron and his wife launched a 218-page defamation lawsuit against Candace Owens in the past, because Candace Owens claimed that the First Lady of France was born male. So the Macrons filed suit back in July, calling the allegations outlandish, defamatory, far-fetched. Macron has said she will present photographic evidence to court to prove that she is a woman. I don't know what's supposed to clarify as a woman nowadays if you listen to one member of our Supreme Court. We're going to have to see where this goes, but it's just one of these things that you think, I don't know where Candace Owens is on this. I haven't followed it that close, but it's getting to a point where we're going to start seeing more political action. I wanted to give you a heads up on it. As I said, with Larry Connors USA, you get an education in every hour. And let me add to that. I know you've heard that Jimmy Kimmel will be back on the air tonight. They're conflicting stories. Disney and ABC supposedly caving to pressure from boycotts and left-wing backlash and allowing him to return to the air tonight. But there's some saying still that we're not so sure we're going to let him on. Nexstar and Sinclair own between the two of them, about 60 ABC stations across the nation. It's not clear from Nexstar, but Sinclair is indicating we're not ready to say, welcome back, Jimmy. So he may well not come back on. Kimmel apparently agreed to come back. He agreed to come back? That's the way this is written. He agreed to come back? He agreed to come back after discussions with the Disney CEO, Bob Iger. That man has ruined everything Walt Disney envisioned. I could care less if Kimmel comes back. If you want to watch him, fine. I'd rather watch reruns of something truly funny. The old Johnny Carson show. Or Seinfeld. But if Kimmel's going back on the air, it will be interesting to see, does he clean up his act? Now, I will point out to you, I was not in favor of anyone saying the FCC should threaten to yank licenses. Let the market do that. If the market doesn't like the program, they're not going to support it. The buyers, the sponsors are gone. Kimmel is gone. He may have a contract where he gets paid out, and he may be having that right now with ABC and the discussion with Disney, I should say. You owe me. You either use me or put me on the bench, but you're going to owe me. And if you fire me, I'll sue you. There's probably a little bit of that going on behind the scenes. No surprise there. But Jimmy Kimmel ceased to be funny the more harsh and violent he got in his attacks on conservatives in general, and Christians, and Jews. Earlier this year, Charlie Kirk made a prediction, which unfortunately turned out to be reality. That story when we continue.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
The Napoli heritage of fine dining continues with Napoli Kirkwood. Napoli Kirkwood, now open. So add that to Cafe Napoli in Clayton, Napoli 2 in Town and Country, Napoli 3 in St. Charles, right next door to Napoli C, and don't forget about Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in the district, Chesterfield Valley. All of those locations, plus now, open, Napoli Kirkwood.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
My fear, Senator, and I hope I'm wrong, and let's say stay in prayer that I'm wrong, that someone is going to get shot the same way that Steve Scalise got shot, and God forbid, killed. The left is creating a pressure cooker with so many of their rank and file paramilitary troops that very well might result in one of us getting shot or killed. God forbid that happens. We're getting death threats every single day here on the Charlie Kirk Show.
Those were the words of Charlie Kirk earlier this year, warning that with the hate rhetoric boiling over, it's going to lead to violence. Someone will be shot and killed. And, of course, it ended up being Charlie. We're praying for good to come out of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. But I'm not as hopeful as I should be praying. I have a commentary that ran today saying that my faith is weak compared to Erica Kirk. As she had stated at the memorial, that young man that shot Charlie, I forgive him. I say the other day, and throughout the day I've been running that commentary acknowledging my faith is not as strong as it should be to be forgiving. I'm still not there. But I want to share something with you from the Federalist, written by Jordan Boyd, we often have on. Charlie Kirk's memorial marks maybe the beginning of the end for third wayism and lukewarm Christianity. Christians' focus from now on should be on living boldly for the Lord, like Charlie did, even if it becomes a hill in which we die. There is a passage in the Bible that you are lukewarm and I spit you from my mouth. If you're not fervent in your religion and willingly, boldly displaying it, then you are lukewarm. We have many Jews that are under assault constantly, not by anti-Semitics, but by Jew haters. Call them for what they are. We have many Christians under assault because they are Christian. A nation founded on freedom of religion, and now you can be killed for it and for saying the wrong thing. Don Lemon Fruitcake has some words I'm going to share with you in our next hour regarding Charlie Kirk. You do not want to miss it. And remember our pledge, one nation under God.
You can hear podcasts of this program at Larry Connors USA Facebook. Larry Connors USA Facebook.
John Bill Roofing reminds you we are in the stormy season, and that means if you have even the smallest leak in your roof, you could soon have a much bigger issue. Call the John Bill to make sure that your biggest investment is protected. That call can save you major dollars. If you do get hit during a storm, John Bill has a rapid response team. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF, John Bill. You and I might have something in common, back pain. I can tell you where I go for help, Esquire Sports Medicine, the spine of St. Louis. They can put athletes back on the field so they can clearly help us. Esquire Sports Medicine, hands-on chiropractic help on Big Bend, just north of Highway 40, 314-644-0885, EsquireSportsMedicine.com, EsquireSportsMedicine.com. Great patio season to enjoy any of the Cafe Napoli locations. How about the Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield? Enjoying coal-fired pizza, nothing else like it. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield. A few doors down, Lit Cigar Lounge, where you can enjoy premium cigars and whiskeys. Check the Lit Cigar Lounge Facebook for details, plus gift cards for friends. I'll see you at Lit Cigar Lounge in Chesterfield. It's that time of season when families, businesses are moving. For local or long distance, I endorse McGuire Moving. Get a date set soon before the schedules are booked. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. McGuire is constantly giving back to our veterans, such as Support Dogs for Our Brave. So with McGuire, you're getting excellent service and helping our vets. McGuireMoving.com. So many times, Vincent's Jewelers has helped me surprise someone special. Vincent's locally owned can do the same for you, and you don't have to break the bank to get something really nice, maybe even customized. The smile you're going to get back from that special someone, priceless. Check VincentsJewelers.com every day because new items are arriving and there are special deals. Vincent's, my only jeweler. VincentsJewelers.com. VincentsJewelers.com. Question: are you looking to unlock the full potential of artificial intelligence for your business? I want you to meet my friends at PRI Global, named by the St. Louis Business Journal as a leading IT consulting firm. 25 years helping local and worldwide companies. PRI Global has a free survey to determine where your company stands in your AI journey. You simply go to priglobal.ai, priglobal.ai. And I also have a phone number, so get ready to copy that number. And I'll remind you that PRI Global has its own AI lab, creating, adapting, developing, pushing the boundaries for what AI can do for you. Here's the number, 636-689-0545, 636-689-0545, or visit priglobal.ai, priglobal.ai.
This is News Talk STL.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Not only is the UN not solving the problems it should, too often, it's actually creating new problems for us to solve. The best example is the number one political issue of our time, the crisis of uncontrolled migration. It's uncontrolled. Your countries are being ruined. The United Nations is funding an assault on Western countries and their borders. In 2024, the UN budgeted $372 million in cash assistance to support an estimated 624,000 migrants journeying into the United States. Think of that. The UN is supporting people that are illegally coming into the United States, and then we have to get them out. The UN also provided food, shelter, transportation, and debit cards to illegal aliens. Can you believe that? On the way to infiltrate our southern border.
That is President Trump earlier today at the UN General Assembly as they opened their 80th General Assembly. And he was basically saying you have failures of globalism that you're trying to push through on all the rest of us in the free world. He said we need to return in our nation to American strength, and you should learn from us. This was his first speech to the globalist body since returning to the White House. Carolyn Levitt had stated in advance, according to The Hill, this would be a major speech touting the renewal of American strength around the world, and it was. Trump said we need a straightforward and constructive vision of global leadership. And basically asking, otherwise, why are we here? Why do we have the UN? Why should we do anything you guys want to? Why do we continue to house you in New York City and basically support the UN more than any other nation? Let them go to Geneva, to Switzerland. Let them start over there. He didn't say that. I did. The UN started with a principle of bringing nations together to avoid war. But it turned out to be warring nations inside the UN and then expanding beyond and pulling in more nations for warring inside the UN. Thanks for joining us. Hour number 2, Larry Connors, USA. And reminding you, when we're on the air, we are live streaming video for you. You can watch the program. Right now, you can go to NewsTalkSTL Rumble, Facebook, or Twitter, and you will see the program. And if you want, you can do the same thing by going to Larry Connors USA Rumble or Facebook. You choose how you want to watch. We just encourage you, if you want to watch, to do so. And reminding you, everything goes up later as a podcast. And when that podcast goes up, we make sure it's available for you on all podcast outlets. You can find it immediately at NewsTalkSTL and at LarryConnorsUSA.com or Larry Connors USA Facebook. Both the audio and the video. You won't miss anything. With Larry Connors USA, every time you're going to get news, analysis, opinion, and education. You're going to walk away from this hour with more knowledge than you have right now. And one piece coming up later this hour, I will tell you right now, I'm not sure I'd call this education, but we're shining a light on it anyway. Former CNN anchor Don Lemon Fruitcake. Again, I insist, I'm not referencing his sexual preference. I could care less. I'm looking at how nutty the guy is. But his remarks about Charlie Kirk and the memorial service the other day, I'm not going to let pass untested. That's coming up later in this hour. In the meantime, we have Russia continuing to push all the buttons it can against Ukraine, NATO nations in general. And that includes several sorties of drones over NATO country air territory, Poland in particular. Retired four-star General Jack King.
They flew several hours, 19 drones into Polish airspace. That is an act of war in itself. And they're testing Poland's response to that. And number two, they're testing their will. And that's what's happened also in Estonia. What do I mean by that? Well, they want Poland to conclude that what they need to do is shore up their defenses better and reduce the resources and support for Ukraine because they're threatening them. Oh. And it's not a hybrid war. These are conventional tactics being used. Russia has the capability to deliver 1,000 drones flying into Ukrainian airspace and into Polish airspace. And it's a fact that Poland would not be able to stop all those drones based on the interceptors that they have and the $1 million interceptors that they are to shoot down a $10,000 drone that has the capability of killing people. Wake up. This is not a hybrid war. This is Russia testing you, and the next step could be quite something significant. And NATO has got to come together and not talk about Article 4, talk about Article 5. And the next step is to shoot them down.
So are you saying
that's where we should be? Wake up, NATO.
Wake up, NATO. When the general refers to Article 5 of the NATO agreement, that's the Collective Defense Clause, stating that an attack on one member is considered an attack on all members. That would require the U.S. to assist the attacked member by taking measures, including the use of armed force, to restore and maintain security for those in the North Atlantic Treaty. This is why Ukraine wanted to get inside NATO. That once inside and becoming part of NATO and part of that agreement, if Russia made the invasion into Ukraine, we would have to be directly involved in war against Russia. NATO is not letting them in that easily, I should say. And that's good. But while they're not part of it, Putin decided we'll go after Ukraine anyway. But now overflying airspace of other NATO nations, violating their airspace, sending drones in. As he pointed out, they're occupying the attention of these NATO nations who are trying to help Ukraine. And they got to worry about their own defenses. What can we send to Ukraine and not jeopardize our defense? And if you want another issue that's continuing to escalate, this is the push by even some of our allied nations to make Palestine a sovereign state. Carolyn Levitt of the White House.
All of these Western nations that are recognizing a Palestinian state, the president has been very clear. He disagrees with this decision. He spoke about that in the UK, standing right next to his friend, Prime Minister Starmer. And he feels this does not do anything to release the hostages, which is the primary goal right now in Gaza, does nothing to end this conflict and bring this war to a close. And frankly, he believes it's a reward to Hamas. So he believes these decisions are just more talk and not enough action from some of our friends and allies.
That's White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt on the dozens of countries who are now recognizing Palestinian statehood or want to do so. France yesterday becoming the latest U.S. ally to do so during the 80th annual UN General Assembly. Belgium, Monaco, Luxembourg, and Malta joined the UK, Canada, and Australia in making similar declarations. The White House says the recognition of a Palestinian state makes it harder to end the war in Gaza.
And they know that. They know it. As it stands right now, just over 78% of all UN members have endorsed Palestine to be a sovereign state. 151 of the 193 member states. The state of Palestine was officially declared by the PLO in November 1988, claiming sovereignty over that internationally recognized Palestinian territories, the West Bank, which includes East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip. By the end of 1988, the Palestinian state was recognized by 88 countries, and then began the decades-long Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And we're at this point now. And one of those nations, so-called allies of the U.S. that are doing this, is the very person that Maria Bartiromo was referring to, or I should say Caroline Leavitt. Trump standing by our ally Starmer. No, the UK is all in favor of the free Palestine. And at the UN today, French President Macron, while he was weaving his way to the lectern, he seemed, according to Politico, as they write it, more relaxed than he had in months, basking in the lengthy applause that followed the end of his 30-minute address, in which he made a passionate bid to, quote, do justice to the Palestinian people and recognize the state of Palestine. In other words, through the words of President Trump, back in his face, and most in the UN applauded. Is the UN doing anything for true peace? Earlier this year, Charlie Kirk had predicted what all the hate in our nation would lead to. His prophecy came true, and Charlie paid the price.
My fear, Senator, and I hope I'm wrong, and let's stay in prayer that I'm wrong, that someone is going to get shot the same way that Steve Scalise got shot, and God forbid, killed. The left is creating a pressure cooker with so many of their rank and file paramilitary troops that very well might result in one of us getting shot or killed. God forbid that happens. We're getting death threats every single day here on the Charlie Kirk Show.
And we know how it ended a few days ago. And if you thought we might have a coming together, that recognizing we've gone too far, no, it's just been boiling up more and more. But you did not see riots in the streets, did you? You did not see cars being overturned and torched, buildings, businesses looted, smashed, thuggery on the streets. You saw flames of candles for vigils. If, and I would not want this to happen, but if a staunch, quote, leader of the left, like an Al Sharpton, had been cut down by a bullet, how do you think reaction would be contrasting to what we've been witnessing? And yet, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries claims we need to stay on the attack.
One thing to understand, as people who are flirting with the Trump administration or doing the bidding of the Trump administration or engaging in the pay-to-play schemes of the Trump administration, the statute of limitations is 5 years. Donald Trump and this toxic administration will be long gone, but there will still be accountability to be had. And that process, of course, begins now, but it will not be complete until perhaps there is an independent Department of Justice, certainly an independent House of Representatives in Democratic hands.
Right.
The Department of Justice is one of the great institutions in law enforcement in the history of this country, and Donald Trump and these extremists have been destroying its integrity.
Hakeem, you spoke the words you weren't supposed to. An independent Congress, independent courts in the Democrat hands, in their control. They would not be independent. There have been folks going to social media to express their thoughts. I want you to hear from a couple. The first is a black woman.
People are leaving the Democrat Party by the droves. After Charlie Kirk's death, and people were celebrating and just rejoicing that a man lost his life, people are leaving the Democrat Party by the droves. They celebrated a father being dead, a brother, a husband, a conservative, a man of God. People are done. The Democrat Party has now become the party of death.
That is, again, from a Democrat, black woman, no longer with the Democrats, obviously. A black man offered similar thoughts.
You go into a room of 100,000 people who just saw one of their most loved leaders get murdered in front of the world on video, and the reaction of the spouse is, I forgive the murderer. And the reaction of the crowd is to stand up and give her the longest standing ovation of the day. And the reaction of the entire movement is, we're not going to retaliate with more violence. We're going to keep saying the truth, and we're just going to keep saying it louder, and there's going to be more of us. And we're going to forgive the people who did this as we say it. That's objectively healthy. And, you know, I was one of the few black people there. And it saddens me because I was like, man, I wish there were more black people here because they'd be welcome there. And there's just so much manipulation. Like, we're in such a mental reality where people are so committed to what's in their head that they don't see what's happening in reality, and they don't go experience what's actually happening on the other side. And man, I just wish everyone could have gotten to go because it was such a beautiful day.
But that memorial, while everyone lifted up a mountain high experience and left with that, they had to come back down to reality of what's around them. And that includes the words of Don Lemon Fruitcake. Lock and load. Ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
I want to tell you more about Wellington Environmental's dustless blasting services. Wellington can blast paint, grease, graffiti, even stripes off parking lots. Truly amazing and powerful. But can Wellington blast something more sensitive? Yes, Wellington can use dry ice to blast soot and odors off smoke-damaged surfaces right after a fire. Currently, Wellington uses dry ice to clean mold off wood inside a home. Why? Well, dry ice immediately disappears, turns into a vapor. That means no mess to clean up, no damaged surfaces. You need to check with Wellington, always researching and practicing with new, better, faster, safer equipment and products for you. And it's very easy to schedule an estimator for your next project. Call Cindy, 314-644-4930, 4930. Be well with Wellington. McGuire Moving is silver certified, which means they are great at relocating senior citizens. In fact, McGuire is a household name because McGuire understands the stress involved when moving older adults. So if you or family members need help moving, I highly recommend McGuire Moving. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. Get a free in-home estimate. McGuireMoving.com. Another day must be another roofer in town. And John Beal and I were talking. He said, you know, every time you turn around, there's a new roofing company. Many of them have no idea what they're doing, and the statistics show that many will be out of business within 2 to 5 years. Who are you going to call to help you then? You need to remember only one name, John Beal. John Beal Roofing. You have a problem, he can take care of it. And we'll be here for you. John Beal Roofing. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. I've got a great evening planned for you. We start with dining at the Oak Street Inn Lounge in Cottleville. We enjoy sunset on the rooftop, then down to the speakeasy. Just one visit, you're going to see why I'm always talking about the Oak Street Inn and Lounge. Plus, you might want to plan a staycation, a romantic getaway. Check out OakStreetInnandLounge.com for various events this summer. Oak Street Inn and Lounge, Cottleville. Oak Street Inn and Lounge, Cottleville.
This is News Talk STL.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
And these are the things that they said Charlie Kirk stood for. He was a man of faith. And the reason that that struck me so is because I got a text from a friend who said, I am a black woman. The person who babysits my child is a black woman from Jamaica. And she says, Charlie Kirk was a person of faith. And I say to them, okay, so what does that mean, a person of faith? How does a person of faith act? How does a person who really believes in what God and the scriptures say, the true meaning of it, not the distorted meaning, how would they treat the least of these? So what I say now is that what happened in Arizona this weekend was not just a memorial. It was something else entirely.
What would that be? It was a memorial, but he's suggesting something sinister inside the Charlie Kirk Memorial. That is Don Lemon, no longer with CNN, reduced to doing his social media postings, trying to remain relevant. And he obviously has some who follow him. I don't follow him, but I made a point to go into it and get that material out. I'll be the first to admit to you, I'm not the most perfect Christian. I'm not anywhere near a perfect Christian. I have many failings, and I have constant sin. But what he's trying to suggest is, what does it mean to be a man of faith? We know what it means if you're really trying, that is, following God's word. Be you Jewish or Christian, you're following God's word. But we are mortals, and we fail. Even in our best efforts, we fail. Let me put it to you this way, and I'd mentioned it in a different context the previous hour. Oh, you missed the previous hour? You can't do it. I know. You can't listen all the time. I understand. That's why we do put up the podcast after each program. Available at NewsTalkSTL, LarryConnersUSA.com, and Larry Connors USA Facebook. But in the previous hour, I was talking about what kind of violence would we have seen on the streets versus silent prayer vigils following the death of Charlie Kirk. What kind of violence would we have seen if someone like an Al Sharpton had been cut down at a gathering, as Charlie was? And I will also add this. I know there would have been a memorial service of faith for Al Sharpton, and a memorial service lifting up his highest esteemed issues that they could. I would not question them. I would not challenge them. But Don Lemon thinks it's perfectly okay to challenge anyone who wants to try to lift Charlie Kirk as an example for the rest of us. And he goes back to going after what would really a biblical person be. It's almost asked with malice and in attack mode. I believe that Don Lemon at some point in his past has revealed that he was born and raised in a Christian family. Would it be that he considered Charlie Kirk to be filled with hate because Charlie Kirk adhered closer to the Bible, especially when it came to same-sex marriages and relationships? Would that be something he would consider an act of hate? Would it be because Charlie Kirk adhered to the Bible to protect the unborn child? I can't answer those questions for Don Lemon, but you listen to him and see if you have any answers.
People will tell you that it is about grief. It was about grief, about honoring a man's life, about faith. And on the surface, maybe it looked like that. Tens of thousands gathered. The music swelled. I'm sure some of you saw it. I just saw some of the sound bites. There were prayers and tears and moments of silence. But if you stayed long enough for the little bit that I could stay, and then I said, you know what, I'm out. If you listen long enough and close enough, if you stayed long enough and you listened close enough, you could feel the ground shifting beneath you, because that wasn't just about a man who died. This was about a movement claiming divine permission to rule. Can I get a witness? And all of the sound bites and the words used will reveal to you exactly what I said. It was a revival meeting wrapped in a memorial. I'm from the South, Southern Baptist, went to Catholic school. You know what a revival meeting is, right? That is the holiest of holy rollers having a revival. Let the church say amen. It was a revival meeting wrapped in a memorial, a political rally dressed as church.
It was not a political rally dressed as church. It was Americans coming together to mourn for the loss of a man who stood for what we as a nation should stand for. And Don Lemon kind of gave away some of his background there, that Baptist, Catholic. I recognize a revival. That's all right. You can look at a memorial service as a revival. In one way, I hope it was. But he looks at it in a demeaning way. Would he say the same thing if such a memorial service were held for an assassinated Al Sharpton? And I do not wish that. I cannot emphasize that enough. I do not wish that. But would he say the same thing? The answer is no. Because it wouldn't be a political campaign wrapped up. Well, Charlie was not running for anything. Oh, yeah, but there were conservatives there. I don't know how many conservatives might attend a Al Sharpton funeral or memorial. There might be some. And that would be their choice. And I have nothing to say against them. Don Lemon is trying to stoke again fear of conservatives, even when they gather to pray and memorialize. He continues.
What we saw in that arena was not simply faith finding public expression. It was religious nationalism on full display. That is the truth. That is my truth. This is my freedom of expression. This is my First Amendment right to be able to tell you the truth from my point of view. Not just from my point of view. This is what it is.
No, you just changed it.
The language was unmistakable. Take the nation back for God. Restore America's covenant. This is a holy calling. That's what it sounded like. This is not the language of democracy. This is the language of domination. Because I feel many people, when I wrote this book, said, I had no idea that you were a person of faith, that you had such strong belief in the Almighty. And I say, because faith is a private matter. It comforts. It convicts. It calls us to humility. But when faith fuses with power, it begins to ask for something else. It asks for obedience. It divides the country into the saved and the damned, the chosen and the condemned. It turns opponents into enemies of God. And when politicians wrap themselves in scripture, they are not calling us to virtue. They are demanding submission.
No, they're not. No one's demanding submission. Take what you just heard Don Lemon say about how this was really a nationalist rally. Well, I'm proud of my nation. I'm proud of my Christianity, yes. But I want you to contrast what he was saying to words from former ESPN host Keith Olbermann. He made a remark about Charles Jennings on the CNN program. And he wrote on his social media, and this is reference Charlie Kirk, "You're next, MFer." Does that sound like compassion from the left? Which one is calling for violence and submission? I rest my case.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
I've got a phone number for you and a website where you can take a free, quick survey to learn how to use artificial intelligence, AI, to put your company on a fast track to the future. Here's the number. It's a 636 area code, 636-689-0545. 689-0545. This is PRI Global. And recently, the St. Louis Business Journal named PRI Global as a leading IT consulting company. 25 years working with hundreds of companies, several Fortune 500, locally and around the world. PRI Global has its own AI lab to develop what's best for your company. Take the free survey and be on your way to the future. 636-689-0545. 689-0545. Or go direct, priglobal.ai. priglobal.ai. Hey, looking for windows that solve your problems and actually add value to your home? Renewal by Andersen. Andersen products increase your home value by at least 15%. Right now, get $329 off every window, $729 off every patio or entry door, and ask about our zero interest plan for 3 years. Renewal by Andersen, the full-service replacement division of Andersen. That's a name you've trusted for more than 122 years. Renewal by Andersen has FiberX frames, 20% stronger than vinyl, built to last. It's why we have more 5-star reviews than anyone in St. Louis. And only Renewal by Andersen backs it up with the nation's best warranty. Schedule your complimentary consultation, rbastl.com, or call 877-WINDOWS, 877-WINDOWS. Renewal by Andersen, superior products, exceptional service. You've worked hard for your money, so protect it. Meet my friend Bob Leslie and ask about the Gain and Retain Plan. Leslie Consulting, 40 years in the St. Louis area as a leader in brokerage and risk management. Call 314-721-0066, 721-0066. Oh, and ask Bob how he was the L.A. Dodger #1 pick. LeslieConsulting.com.
This is NewsTalk STL.
He back production. He got walrus gumbo. He got on no sideboard. He want spinal cracker. He got feet down below his knee. Hold you in his armchair. You can feel his disease come together.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
What is the purpose of the United Nations? The UN has such tremendous potential. I've always said it. It has such tremendous, tremendous potential, but it's not even coming close to living up to that potential. For the most part, at least for now, all they seem to do is write a really strongly worded letter and then never follow that letter up. It's empty words, and empty words don't solve war. The only thing that solves war and wars is action.
That is President Trump earlier today at the United Nations as he opened for their 80th Assembly. The UN Charter, signed on June 26, 1945, had the mission of maintaining international peace and security, to develop friendly relations among the states, the various nations, to promote international cooperation, serve as a center for harmonizing the actions of states in achieving these same goals. Very lofty words, right? It quickly has become a propaganda machine and basically a cult center for the left and those who would do harm to democracy and our republic. The UN in the mid-20th century was focused primarily on economic and social development, especially during the decolonization of the mid-20th century. It's been perceived as leading in peace and human development, and yet it's also been criticized for ineffectiveness, bias, and corruption, so named by Donald Trump just then. It was during World War I that U.S. President Woodrow Wilson advocated for a world body to guarantee peace. The Allies met to decide on formal peace terms at the Paris Peace Conference. That's when they started the League of Nations. The U.S. never joined. The League of Nations, ratified by 42 other nations in 1919, took effect. Keep in mind, this was after World War I. The first step toward the current United Nations was an inter-allied conference in London during World War too. But now we have those inside the UN who want to basically drive a stake through the heart of those who are trying to preserve liberty, freedom for all. They will lip service such words, but they're not backing it up with their votes. This involves specifically more Western countries coming together to recognize Palestine as a state. Currently, 151 of the 193 member states of the UN, 78%, say Palestine should be a sovereign state. Benjamin Netanyahu is saying no, and he's doubling down on it, saying we had to ensure there is never a Palestinian state. Because what they really want, the Palestinians, you hear it in their cry on the streets, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. That would mean there would be no Israel. It would not just be the Gaza Strip. Prime Minister Netanyahu had a stark message for Britain, France, Canada, Australia. They are the ones among those joining to say, let's make Palestine a sovereign state. And he said, and I'm quoting the Prime Minister, it will not happen. There will be no Palestinian state west of the Jordan. He used to give a speech at the UN on Friday. But he's already said the response to the latest attempt to impose a terrorist state on us in the heart of our country will be given after my return from the U.S. By that, he's saying we're not just going to deal with diplomatic routes. We're looking for direct routes, which escalates to munitions and war. Israel has been looking to focus on building more settlements and expanding areas of military control on the West Bank that would fragment the Palestinian communities into smaller groups, which they don't want. They want to be more all together. They want to be more autocratic, which is understandable geographically and otherwise. But the purpose of many inside the PLO is to destroy Israel, kill the Jews. House Foreign Affairs Committee ranking member Congressman Gregory Meeks, Democrat, New York, said, I think what the world is calling for is an end to the war in Gaza because they see every day the number of individuals, women, children, men, reporters being killed, buildings, people running around. They see the humanitarian disaster that evolved there. Folks can't get food. Why is that? Have you stopped to ask why is that? What was it like before the October 7 invasion of Jerusalem when Hamas went into the southern areas? They had their own communities in Gaza and in Palestine, but they also had a network of terrorist tunnels under schools, hospitals, where the cowardly Hamas members could hide under baby beds. That's what it was like then. There was no peace for them. And when Israel decided to strike back, it took a calculated approach and said, we're going to start with the southern end of Gaza. You need to move to the north to be free of being injured or killed. Many Palestinians did that. But Hamas did not let all of them go because they wanted collateral damage. They wanted the video of children with limbs blown apart. They wanted video of grieving mothers for their propaganda. So someone like Congressman Meeks can say, we want all of this to stop. Ask again how and why it started. Before it started, there were members of the PLO, Palestinians, let me phrase it that way, that were routinely traveling across the border separating Palestine from Jerusalem. They were allowed to go into Jerusalem, Israel, and do work. They were earning money. And there were plans to open the door for more to come in to Israel for work. So nobody was starving, being killed at that point. It was a delicate balance, but it was a tolerance level. And then you had Hamas say, they are weak, we can attack, and they truly believed that the rest of the Arab nations, the Muslim nations, would follow them. Hezbollah did, the Houthi rebels did, Iran did, but the others kind of backed off. And to this day, no other Muslim nation, no other Arab nations is willing to take any of the Palestinians from that area. They don't want them. They fear that in their midst will be what we all know, terrorists. They don't want them on their soil. But Congressman Meeks trying to take, he thinks, a statesman approach. In my view, you can't take the fact of having a Palestinian state away. We need to have it. I think that's a goal. The hardest part is negotiations. Well, that's one thing you said that makes sense. But no nation wants to have another nation on its border that is filled with rage and hate and the sole goal of destroying you and your children and your nation. I know I use it a lot, but it stands out to me as just a perfect period to every time we have such a discussion. That would be a quote by Golda Meir, the first prime minister of Israel, a woman, Golda Meir, talking about the battle then with the enemies of Israel. And she said it very clearly. We will have peace with our enemies when our enemies love their children more than they hate us. And that is so true. Texas has a new law which will help protect our children, at least in that state. It may grow to other states. Just got signed into effect by Governor Abbott.
I'm about to sign a law that says no men in women's restrooms. This is just common sense.
It's common sense. No men in women's restrooms. And when Governor Abbott signed that the other day, it should not have really been anything of great concern, except it should be accepted as it's a fact. That was Senate Bill 8 after the Texas House had passed it. Takes effect December 4, requiring people to use facilities, bathrooms, restrooms in government-owned buildings, including schools and universities, that align with their gender assigned at birth. It also includes family violence shelters, prisons, and jails. Organizations that violate this law face a $25,000 fine for the first offense, $125,000 for the second. Texas passed the bill, obviously, pushing against LGBTQ, claiming that we need to have everything for transgenders. No, we don't. The American Civil Liberties Union, quick to rebuke Abbott, saying we're going to encourage gender policing by those who seek to attack transgender people. There's nothing in there that says we want to attack transgender people. It just says if you were born a male, you'll use a male facility. If you're female, the other. That is if people know. Now, if you're a transgender, you're dressing whatever way you choose, and you walk into a public building, even the state capitol, and you're really born a male, but you're now posing as a female, you'll probably be able to get away with going in there. And maybe saying, oh, I pulled one over on them, didn't I? That's fine. But we're making it very clear. There is a law that says it is wrong, and we're not going to abide by it. I went to fill out an application the other day, and it had 8 different things on there as to how I could classify myself. I scratched through all of them and just wrote human. I know some of you think you're not a human. You're a jack, well, whatever you might think. As always, thanks for listening. Remember our pledge: one nation for God.